Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Shodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Shodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Shri Radha Murlidhara ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Am I supposed to share my screen here?
I can share mine, Vasudev Prabhu. Don't worry about it.
Yes. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 4. Can somebody close the door? Canto 10, Chapter 4, text number 1. There's quite a lengthy summary here of the chapter, which I won't read for the sake of time. But the summary of this chapter the chapter is called The Atrocities of King Kamsa. So in this chapter, first Yogamaya appears, and she assumes an 8-armed form to Kamsa, and she tells him, the one who's going to kill you has already taken birth somewhere else, and stop your atrocities of killing all the children, because Kamsa's plan was to kill all the children in the area, in a radius of so many miles. Every child who had just taken birth was to be killed. So, and then Kamsa becomes quite repentant after this instruction of Yogamaya or Durga Devi. And he falls at the feet of Devaki and Vasudeva, and he begs for forgiveness. And he tells them it's all by providence that this has happened. Don't blame me for it. So he very conveniently uses some philosophy to get himself off the hook. And then of course, very soon after, he meets with his ministers. And his ministers, they're not quite as forgiving. They encourage him to get rid of all the brahmanas and all the cows, and to double up on his atrocities in his battle against the demigods and Vishnu, who has just taken birth. So that's the summary of the chapter. So there's three main subjects: the appearance of Yogamaya, there's the repentance of Kamsa, and then his reverting back to his demoniac ways by the influence of his demoniac advisors. So now we'll start with text number 1. Shri Shukavacha Bahir Antapuradvar Sarvat Purvavadav Avrita Tato Bala Dhvanim Shutva Grihapala Samuttita. Shri Shukavacha, Shri Shukadev Goswami said, Bahi Antapura Dwara. The doors inside and outside of the house, Sarvaha, all, Purvavat, like before, Avritaha, closed, Tataha, thereafter, Baladhvanim, like the crying of the newborn child, Shrutva, hearing, Grihapala, all the inhabitants of the house, especially the doormen, Samutitaha, awakened. Translation. Shukadev Goswami continued, my dear King Parikshit, the doors inside and outside the house closed as before. Thereafter, the inhabitants of the house, especially the watchmen, heard the crying of the newborn child and thus awakened from their beds.
Very sad.
Purport.
I'm not asking for something.
The activities of Yogamaya are distinctly visible in this chapter, in which Devaki and Vasudeva excuse Kamsa for his many devious, atrocious activities, and Kamsa becomes repentant and falls at their feet. Before the awakening of the watchman and the others in the prison house, many other things happened. Krishna was born and transferred to the home of Yashoda in Gokul. The strong doors opened and again closed, and Vasudev resumed his former condition of being shackled. The watchmen, however, could not understand all this. They awakened only when they heard the crying of the newborn child, Yogamaya. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has remarked that the watchmen were just like dogs. At night, the dogs in the street act like watchmen. If one dog barks, many other dogs immediately follow it by barking. Although the street dogs are not appointed by anyone to act as watchmen, they think they are responsible for protecting the neighborhood. And as soon as someone unknown enters it, they all begin to bark. Both Yogamaya and Mahamaya act in all material activities. Prakrite, Kriyamanani, Gunai, Karmani, Sarvasha. But although the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead acts under the Supreme Lord's direction, Maya Jakshina Prakriti Suyate Sacharacham, dog-like watchmen such as politicians and diplomats think that they are protecting their neighborhoods from the dangers of the outside world. These are the actions of Maya. But one who surrenders to Krishna is relieved of the protection afforded by the dogs and dog-like guardians of this material world. Om Agyanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Mancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam. I beg for the blessings of all the Vaishnavas, especially the senior Vaishnavas, Adipurush Prabhu, and whoever is present here. I'll try to speak loud. Am I? Yeah. Okay. Good. So, yeah, it's a really wonderful purport here of Srila Prabhupada, elucidating this kind of short text. So, Vasudev just went on an adventure. He took Krishna, who just had taken birth in the prison house, he took him over the Jamuna, which parted, to the house of Yashoda and Nanda. And Yashoda Mai, she was, it said that she was very fatigued from her childbirth. So she had fallen fast asleep. This was actually the action of Yogamaya. So she could not understand what kind of child had taken birth from her. It was a male child, female child. So Vasudeva, he arrived there. Everybody was fast asleep. So he exchanged the babies. He put Krishna there in the care of Yashoda, and he took the daughter, which is Yogamaya, and took her back home. So it was all possible by the actions of Yogamaya. So now he just went back to the prison. He shackled himself again. The shackle went back on him, and everything's back as normal. It's described here. The doors got closed. He came back. The doors got closed as before. And the doors had opened up also by the influence of Yogamaya. And now this child started to cry. And that's where things kind of, the pastime continues. So it said, Bala Dhanim Shukla, all the Grihapala, the watchman, because it's a prison, we're in a prison. Just imagine it's a prison. Many cells probably there, different people being locked up there in quite horrible conditions. And there's many watchmen in the prison. You have watchmen. So there's many watchmen there. So they were fast asleep due to the influence of Yogamaya, through which Vasudev could leave the prison and bring Krishna away. So now they hear the sound of this child, and suddenly they wake up. Baladhanim Shutva, Griha Pala Samutita. Hearing the sound, this Baladhanim, the sound of this child, they all wake up, and they want to see what's going on here. So there's two main topics I want to discuss today, and that is the actions of Yogamaya and Mahamaya. And I want to elucidate a little bit on this purport where Prabhupada speaks about the dog-like watchmen and guardians of the material world, which can't really protect anyone. So, Prabhupada here says in the purport, both Yogamaya and Mahamaya act in all material activities. So we hear about Yogamaya and Mahamaya. So what do you understand to be Yogamaya? What do you understand to be Mahamaya? What are the different functions? Now we hear those terms, but it's a little confusing because sometimes they're used interchangeably. So I thought it would be nice to kind of explore this topic a little bit and get a little bit of a clearer understanding. What is Yogamaya? What's Mahamaya? Yes, Champak.
My understanding is that Yogamaya is Yogamaya bewilders Krishna and his devotees for the purpose of increasing the sweetness and ecstasy of the Lord's devotees and the Lord's pastimes. So it is a function of the Lord's internal energy, and it is a servant of the Lord to just increase the bliss of those who are surrendered to the Lord and serving the Lord and his pastimes.
So Champak is saying that Yogamaya is the function of the Lord's internal energy, which bewilders the devotees and even Krishna, and therefore, and in this way facilitate their pastimes. Yeah.
And Mahamaya is the function of the Lord's external energy that bewilders those who have decided to turn away from Krishna and try to, and who are in Maya, who are trying to be God and enjoy the material world, and be the controller, and it bewilders them, and the reason why it bewilders them is because they want to be bewildered, because they want to forget Krishna. So Yogamaya is helping people to even sometimes forget who Krishna is so that they can serve Krishna, whereas mahamaya is bewildering people who they want to be bewildered so they can enjoy material energy.
So mahamaya also bewilders the conditioned souls who turn away from Krishna, who don't want to know Krishna, who don't want to serve Krishna especially, and so the mahamaya bewilders them and makes them forget Krishna, makes them forget themselves. Yes. Any other contributions here online? About Yogamaya and Mahamaya? So Yogamaya and Mahamaya are actually one and the same energy. These terms, first of all, Yogamaya, Mahamaya, sometimes Prabhupada uses these terms, but we don't always understand where they're coming from. So I did a little research where this is coming from, and this is coming from the Narada Pancharatra. This is quoted by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his purport to Canto 10, Chapter 1, Text 25. It's a purport what we refer to, where the first time it's described that that along with Krishna, Vishnu Maya will appear, Bhagavati or Vishnu Maya, Krishna's energy, Vishnu Maya will appear as Yogamaya. So there's described that Yogamaya is actually, it's originally part of Krishna's Swarupa Shakti, its internal energy. And she's described there as Gokuleshwari in that particular verse, which Vishwanath Chakravarti is quoting. She consists of pure prema, pure love for Krishna, and she arranges all the pastimes of the Lord. It's also said that this energy takes different forms. It's Yogamaya and Vaikuntha arranges the pastimes there. Purnamasi in Vrindavan. Purnamasi is described as an elderly lady who is orchestrating all the pastimes. She makes all the arrangements for the pastimes. She's very wise, all-knowing, and she has pure love for Krishna. And out of her pure love for Krishna, she makes beautiful arrangements for all of Krishna's pastimes. So that's why she's also described as Gokuleshwari in this particular verse, the controller of Gokula. Even Krishna sometimes comes under her control although he's Sarveshwareshwar, the controller of all controllers. By his own will, sometimes he comes under the control of Yogamaya for the sake of the pastimes. And we see how this energy sometimes bewilders Krishna and his form. For example, Krishna had expanded himself in unlimited cowherd boys after they were stolen by Brahma and put into kind of a mystic slumber. Then even Balarama could not understand that all these boys are actually Krishna himself. Even Balarama, the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, who was all-knowing. But Yogamaya, and he can never be controlled by Mahamaya, by the external energy. But even he got under the control of this Yogamaya potency, which he couldn't understand. So this is that bewildering aspect of Yogamaya, but it's all to facilitate the pastimes. And then it's described in this verse of the Narada Pancharatra that one aspect of this Yogamaya potency called Mahamaya. This term is used there. So that's where it's from. So Srila Prabhupada, he's not making up these terms, but he is referring back to this verse and this purport. And Mahamaya is described as the one who bewilders the entire material universe. Her function is described in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Vyasa Samadhi, where he sees, after Bhakti Yogena Manasi Samyak Pranihite Male, Vyasadeva goes into deep Samadhi on the instruction of Narada Muni. And in his Samadhi, affected by Bhakti Yoga, he sees the Supreme Person Apashat Purusham Purnam, the complete supreme person, Mayam Tat Upashram, and under his control is Maya. And this is that aspect of Yogamaya called Mahamaya. And what does she do? Yayasa Mohito Jiva Atmakam Trigunatmakam Paropi Manute Nartam Tat Kritam Chavipadyate. That by this energy of Mahamaya, the entire, all jivas are bewildered. Yayasa Mohito Jiva Atmakam Trigunatmakam. And they think themselves as a product of the three modes of material nature. That's Paropi Manute Nartam. And although they are para, they're transcendental, they think themselves as a material product, which is anartam, which is actually unwanted. And then they go all the reactions thereof. So that's the function of Mahamaya. Yogamaya is also sometimes called the Vidya potency, or the knowledge energy. Yogamaya reveals the jiva's spiritual identity. And when we take shelter of Yogamaya, she reveals our spiritual identity and even our spiritual form. That's why it's described that Vidya Vadhu Jivanam. Lord Chaitanya describes the chanting of the holy name as the life and soul of all transcendental knowledge. So Vidya Vadhu Jivanam, it's the life of the Vadhu, of the bride named Vidya. So Vidya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained, refers to Krishna's Yogamaya potency here, which is like a Vadhu, a bride, because she's the Shakti of Krishna. So she's like consort. All the consorts are related to Krishna, like that. And the holy name is the life and soul of that potency named Vidya. So whenever we chant the holy name, then the Yogamaya energy appears and starts to destroy our material identification and starts to reveal to us who we are as an eternal spirit soul beyond the modes of material nature, and gradually reveals our spiritual identity and relationship to whatever Krishna's form we're worshiping. So, but the material energy is called avidya. She is the nescience potency. So she bewilders the jivas and makes them forget their eternal identity. Srila Prabhupada puts it in a very interesting way in Canto 10, chapter 125, the verse I just referred to. It says that that Mahamaya acts upon the conditioned souls to deprive them more and more of devotional service. This is what Mahamaya does to us. It deprives us more and more of devotional service. So, and we see this, like we know this in our own life when we focus on Mahamaya and her different manifestations, then she tends to take over our lives and deprives us of devotional service, a tendency to do devotional service. So they're essentially the same potency. Yogamaya, Mahamaya, they're the same potency, but they act in different ways. Like in the famous examples given, electricity is one energy, but we have an air conditioner here, so it can produce cold. And we also, not now, but when it's colder, we have a heater in here, it's plugged in, and that same electrical energy produces heat. So it works in two opposite ways, but it's the same energy. So it's the one energy revealing Krishna, bringing us closer to Krishna, creating yoga or connection to Krishna, or pushing us away. So it's very interesting to see that same energy works in Krishna's pastimes in different ways. For example, here, in this pastime, that energy appears. And she's been facilitating the whole pastime. And so she's been acting as Yogamaya for Vasudeva and Devaki. But to Kamsa, she appears as Durga Devi in 8-armed form. She's Mahamaya. She's covering Krishna. She's not allowing Kamsa to even get a glimpse of Krishna, to speak of like putting a finger on him. She's covering, she's pushing him away from Krishna. You stay away, Kamsa. And similarly, in other pastimes, we see Krishna, by his internal potency to Arjuna, reveals his universal form. And Arjuna is recognizing, yeah, this Krishna's supreme greatness. It's a revelation. But that universal form is also revealed to Duryodhana. But in that pastime, Mahamaya, she's acting as Mahamaya because the universal form is shown. But his intelligence is still covered by which he cannot understand, oh, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the reason is because he's envious of Krishna. There's hostility against Krishna. And this is the characteristic of Mahamaya. Yogamaya takes place in the heart of the devotee who becomes Krishna Anmukha, who turns towards Krishna, who gives up hostility and envy towards Krishna. Then that revelation takes place. But for those who have hostility, who turn away from Krishna out of a sense of envy and wanting to take his position, then Mahamaya acts. So you can understand when Mahamaya is acting, when that hostility is there towards Krishna, when that sense of, so the both may be the same energy acting in both ways. But when there is hostility against Krishna, then you know for sure this is a function of Mahamaya. And why is there hostility? That's the jiva's free will to either turn towards Krishna, turn away to Krishna. So we have this choice in front of us at all times between Yogamaya and Mahamaya. Prabhupada gives a very nice example, very relevant to us, of the radio. And radio, you can turn into different channels. You can turn into, very beautiful, sattvic, classical energy. Bach, who was, composed music inspired by God. Or we can turn into X amount of other, I'm not familiar with nobody who listens to radios nowadays. The same thing still would apply to internet, or we can tune into so many different things. So we are marginal, we can tune into Mahamaya, we can tune into Yogamaya. And like you can tune into different channels. And accordingly, we'll be actually inspired, or devotional service will be revealed to us as something very valuable, and Krishna will be revealed to us as something very valuable and as our life and soul. Or when we turn towards Mahamaya, then what happens, very interesting, Krishna becomes covered, devotional service becomes covered, we become covered. So we don't understand who we are, first of all. We become covered, our spiritual identity becomes covered. Then we think devotional service is some kind of like mundane activity. It's like, oh, why do I have to do this? You see it as an ordinary thing. And Krishna also doesn't appear to us as someone like Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How amazing he is. How is it that this whole world is going on by his amazing energies? We can't see that. We just look at Krishna as, like we read his pastimes and we think, oh, this is an ordinary thing. Or we look at the world and we think, oh, it's all just going on, just because of it's going on. Or we look at the deity and we think, oh, not dressed so well today, or something like that. We lose that appreciation, that revelation doesn't take place because of Mahamaya. We're deprived. The depriving aspect is there, depriving of our internal identity, depriving of understanding of devotional service, and deprived of understanding who Krishna really is. So these are the functions of Mahamaya. So we can tune into either. So I wanted to discuss one more topic, but for the sake of time, I will stop here and open up for some questions and reflections. So yes, Dharanga Prabhu.
I have two questions.
Yes.
One is you're mentioning this phrase from the Shikshastakam Vidyavada Jivana. And then in the next verse of Shikshastakam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions how there's no hard and fast rules, niyamata. And so he says, so for us to chant, we can chant, and that's mahamaya appearing. But at the same time, Purnamasi, she's in charge of making all of the arrangements and the environments in order for Krishna's pastimes to actually take place and to manifest. And so we can chant and experience mahamaya, Yogamaya and Krishna's energy through the holy name. But I wanted to ask if you could speak also about like the environments created for us to experience that. So like we chant our japa, but then is it just that we chant our japa and Yogamaya appears, or is it that there's an environment that's created in terms of like a lifestyle that we lead in terms of like how
there are 20 people that can't hear this.
I'll repeat it.
Turn it around, yeah. But we have a microphone. It's a shame. Such a good question.
And so
Actually, we heard it as someone on the Zoom. We heard it loud and clear, and also there's a transcription going on the phone as well. So that was heard pretty succinctly, pretty clearly.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. So yeah, let me rephrase the question also from my own understanding. So the Gaurangas Prabhu was asking, when we chant, for example, then when we chant properly, then Yogamaya's function is there, and that kind of revelation takes place. But that how important is to create like an environment for that thing to happen in our own lifestyle?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yes. I'm thinking of one statement. It's not quite coming to mind, but something like where attention goes, energy flows, or it's the opposite. Yeah, we have to be attentive. And so we have to create an environment where we can be attentive. The main function of Bhakti Yoga, it says that smartavya satatam Vishnu vismartavya najatati. That the goal of all rules and regulations is to always remember Krishna and to not to forget him. We have to create an environment in which it becomes more easy to remember Krishna, and we have to create an environment, and on the opposite, avoid environments where it becomes very easy to forget Krishna. So an environment where it's easy to focus our attention on Krishna. For example, we may put our phone aside or turn our phone off, because that's creating an environment favorable for putting our attention towards Krishna. That's why it's nice that we come together once in a while, but there's a fresh inspiration in our lives when we come together to hear and chant about Krishna, because an environment is created where it becomes more easy to remember Krishna and to feel his presence. So we should always look for those kind of opportunities and do our best in our lives to create this kind of environment externally and also internally, by, as Prabhupada says, by molding our lives in such a way that we remember Krishna always. There's a lot more I could say about this. This is just some initial thoughts.
Addressing that, excellent question. One way to express it would be, we must create an environment. But the way, yesterday, especially the way Srila was talking about the same subject, mahamaya, yoga, and we're thinking as devotees, I want to be in Yogamaya. I want to be like, thinking if I don't feed Krishna, he'll die. How do I get there? And you're saying we must create an environment, but in addition to that, not in contrary to that, we might mention that our relationship with the spiritual master, what brings us from Yogamaya, from Mahamaya, because we have a spiritual master and his representative, and we have prescribed duty. And you see the Pujari running, I gotta get the finish line, I got to take care of the deities, and so you're drawn by your prescribed duty into, if I don't feed Krishna, he'll die, So the spiritual, if we have that relationship with the spiritual master, and say, what do you want me to do? And he says, I want you to do this for the books, I want you to preach, I want you to build a temple. Then you throw yourself into that as an understanding that if I don't do this, I won't please my spiritual master, I don't have access to Krishna. So that's the relationship between the guru and the disciple is what creates the environment, where we're drawn into really feeling that this is necessary. Krishna's floating the planet through space, but no, I've got to just be.
Yes.
This
So-
whole shift.
Let me
Please, yes.
so Adiprabhu was saying that it's the relationship with the spiritual master which creates that environment. It's the relationship. And Srila Prabhupada indeed mentions that that devotional service. Actually, it is in the Nectar of Devotion where he's quoting from Diva Goswami. That devotional service takes place under the Swarupa Shakti, Krishna's internal energy. And one's access to that internal energy is the grace of the spiritual master and the devotees. They carry that internal energy. Only through their grace can we really access the internal energy of devotional service by which that revelation takes place.
Prabhupada told me I want you to double your service every year. Oh, I didn't. When you get an instruction like that, you can't unring that bell. And then it's there.
Yes.
Years, decades later, and you think, well, that's what I must do. Or I have to. And then you under Yogamaya, I think, I don't know, maybe that's the way my understanding.
Thank you. Just want to give a little attention to our online audience here. Do we have any?
Gail has a question.
Yes, Gail.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, a couple things. One is, I'm so happy that you were talking about Yogamaya versus Mahamaya. So we hear them as personalities, right? And so if it's one energy acting in two different ways, then it seems as though these two terms, Mahamaya and Yogamaya, are really functional terms rather than, I don't know if I should say ontological terms,
Yeah, I get your point.
Yeah, and therefore, if that is the case, why do we seem to refer to them as two different personalities? Just because they're the way the energy functions differs.
Yeah, it's the one in the same energy, but still different aspects and different forms to that energy. It's very similar to why we refer to Krishna and his forms as like for Nrsingadev, for example, right?
Yeah.
It's Krishna. Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa. It's Krishna assuming this form of Lord Nrsingadev. So we see Krishna in him, but also there's a distinct role to the form of Lord Nrsingadev, and we almost talk about them as different personalities because there's also some difference in mood and in function they exhibit. Like Lord Nrsingadev is Krishna is playing his flute, and Lord Nrsingadev is displaying the unlimited anger of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One of the aspects of Lord Nrsingadev. So there's a distinct feature to that form, but it's the one and the same person.
Oh,
So I think you can understand this, or you can understand Yogamaya, Mahamaya in the same way. Same energy, same personality behind it, but
Mhm.
with different distinct features.
Yes, that's beautiful. Beautiful explanation. And then one other thing is, I asked this question with guilt, but when you were saying that sometimes we, look at the deities and we might not be so happy with the dressing, right?
It's a very personal example.
So why is that necessarily a function of Mahamaya at work?
Well, because that may be a reality also, but like the deities may objectively not be dressed so well. But if you, by spiritual vision, you can still understand this is Krishna, and there will still be, when that covering is not there, there will still be that intense attraction towards Krishna. So-
Krishna, yeah. But not necessarily the dressing. I'm thinking of one.
What I'm saying is just we don't want to have an external vision. A typical aspect of this Mahamaya is a very external vision, that we just look at that. We just look at the external and we don't see Krishna. We don't, because Krishna has those beautiful lotus eyes and it's still the same personality. So the function of a pure soul, this is described actually in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, that the function of pure bhakti or prema bhakti is that the consciousness is automatically attracted to Krishna. Just, it says, guna shruti matra, just simply by hearing Krishna, then the consciousness automatically flows as the Ganges flowing to the sea. That's the pure consciousness.
Yes.
That is the consciousness covered by Mahamaya. Immediately it becomes attracted to Krishna whenever Krishna becomes manifest. So you can see this, for example, in Lord Chaitanya. Whenever, hearing Krishna, seeing Krishna, immediately there's like the consciousness like runs there, goes there. So that's the difference. That's what I'm speaking about. And of course, that's a process to revive that. We can't do that overnight, but that's the process we're doing, that purification of consciousness, taking shelter of the holy names, taking shelter of Krishna's internal energy, and then purifying our hearts of the contaminations. And then gradually more and more that attraction should manifest within us. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
The conscience is about to blow, and we're going to see Krishna, hopefully with internal vision.
Thank you, Vasudev. We delight to hear from you.
Prabhupada ki.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. There he is. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Love you all. Haribol. Thanks for